Well, it's in line with forecasts, so it's not going to really change expectations around what the BOJ can do, because all eyes at the moment are really on the Fed and what's happening on that part, and even that's influencing Japanese markets. But the CPI number this morning is broadly on track. We're, of course, waiting for the BOJ meeting that's coming up soon, and they'll tell us what their expectation is about inflation going forward. But it sounds like really we are in striking distance of hitting that permanent 2% inflation target sustainably, which is obviously the key point here. And so that's why the BOJ is tightening policy.
Okay, tightening, but I mean, that historic or landmark meeting a couple of weeks ago, they didn't really do much. It was 10 basis points, right? Come October, folks are saying that's probably when they're going to go another 25. Do you think they will, or will they not do anything at all because the ball is actually in the Fed's court?
At the moment, it's in the Fed's court, and that's putting, of course, pressure on the Japanese yen, and so that might speed up, perhaps, the pace of BOJ tightening, because that's, of course, one way to make sure that the Japanese yen doesn't depreciate too much, right? So if the Fed were not to cut rates, for example, then the BOJ may have to do a bit more. If the Fed were to hike rates, well, then really the pressure is on the BOJ to do more.
Hike rates, that's the outside risk.
It's not out of the realm of possibilities, right? We need to be open-minded. It's not our house view at the moment, but certainly that is a part of the probability spectrum. And so markets are moving now very, very quickly. If we get a few upside surprises in US CPI, then that spills back into the Japanese yen. And of course, it determines on how the BOJ itself looks at the inflation trajectory, because the weaker yen is also fueling imported inflation in Japan.
Indeed. And this whole idea of the Fed not just not hiking rates, but actually not cutting rates, but actually hiking rates, Mans, is something that you've been talking about. Come in on this.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it because the ball is in the Fed's court, Fred, that the BOJ and the MOF seem to have completely thrown in the towel, even on verbal intervention, let alone physical intervention with the Japanese yen, which is currently sitting at 154.5, and we previously all thought that the line, or the magical line in the sand, was around 152.
Well, yes, and in fact, the market gets excited about these lines in the sand. I remember we had talked about it at 150, 152, 154, 155, and the BOJ never comes in. One of the reasons is, and I think you alluded to this, is that at the moment, the weakness of the yen is really part of the dollar leg, because the dollar is rallying globally because of repricing of Fed expectations. And intervening unilaterally would probably not do much to slow down the descent of the yen. So that's part of it. But the other part of it, and I think this is important, is that the weak yen plays a functional role in Japan's reflation. The Japanese don't want necessarily a much stronger yen. As long as the depreciation is orderly, it doesn't accelerate too much, then really what's the point of intervention in the first place? Because it helps drive up inflation, because it helps Japanese exports. And in the world where the euro is weakening, that the Chinese currency is weakening, a weaker yen just helps Japanese exporters a little bit more. And so, there's perhaps less resistance for the BOJ to slow down a descent of the yen.